In your assumption that you know more than I did at the time, you know why it was excluded in the first place? Because it was propensity evidence. You're talking about his attitudes.
Judge Laymen just slammed Blake Lively in open court after she shamelessly tried to troll Taylor Swift right in front of him. It's like she forgot she was in a courtroom and not on a red carpet throwing shade. And in the most self-destructive twist possible, Blake ended up admitting she threatened Taylor, handing the judge exactly what he needed to tear her apart. Main part, it all started during what was supposed to be a quiet pre-trial hearing. Blake Lively is being sued by her former assistant for harassment and defamation. The assistant claims Blake threatened her, bullied her, and tried to ruin her life after she left her job. As the case moved forward, Taylor Swift was brought in as a key witness. Some private messages between Blake and Taylor had leaked, and they were directly connected to the assistant's emotional breakdown. But no one expected Taylor's testimony to flip the entire courtroom upside down. Taylor didn't want to come at first. Her lawyers tried to keep her out of it, saying it would hurt her brand and drag her into someone else's mess. But the judge said no. She had to testify. So Taylor showed up. She took the stand and calmly explained that Blake had threatened her too, warning her not to talk about those leaked texts, and even hinting that she might release more if Taylor didn't stay quiet. How bad must it be if even Taylor Swift needed a court order to feel safe speaking up? While Taylor was telling her side, Blake sat just feet away and started acting out. According to multiple reporters in the room, Blake rolled her eyes, laughed quietly, and even mouthed the words, "You're such a fake," at Taylor while she was testifying. People in the courtroom were stunned. The judge stopped the session and stared directly at Blake. Even the court officers looked uncomfortable. Multiple people inside the courtroom said they heard her mutter, "Enjoy your headlines." It wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to cut through the silence. And it didn't sound like someone defending themselves. It sounded like someone poking the fire even harder. That one line told everyone in the room that Blake wasn't taking this seriously. Instead of sitting still and focusing on her defense, she treated the whole thing like a media game. Court reporters started jotting it down. Taylor's legal team turned toward the judge. Even Blake's own lawyers seemed uncomfortable. Some of them started whispering among themselves, not in strategy, but in damage control mode. Why would someone facing legal heat decide to double down in front of a federal judge? Observers in the courtroom picked up on something else too. It wasn't just the words. It was Blake's body language. Legal experts watching the hearing live on closed-circuit footage said her behavior was completely unprofessional. She smirked, she laughed, she rolled her eyes, all this while Taylor Swift was talking about being blackmailed, threatened, and emotionally wrecked. It wasn't just a bad look, it gave the impression that Blake didn't care at all. A body language analyst on a primetime legal panel said her posture and expressions reflected someone who believes they're above the room. It was as if she still thought she was on a red carpet, not in front of a federal judge deciding whether she's guilty of harassment and defamation. Can sarcasm and eye rolls now count as evidence in court? Maybe not, but they sure left an impression. But it didn't stop there. Later that same day, a major entertainment outlet brought in a professional lip reader to go over video footage from the courtroom. The clip in question showed Blake turning toward Swift's side of the courtroom and mouthing something after she was done testifying. According to the expert, the words were, "You'll regret this." The moment was short, just 2 seconds, but when it hit the media, it exploded. People online couldn't believe what they were hearing. Within an hour, hashtags like #Blake threatens and #regret this started trending. Taylor Swift's fans called it open intimidation. Legal professionals started weighing in too, saying that if the report was accurate, it could cross the line from rude behavior into actual legal misconduct. So now the question wasn't just what Blake said, it was whether she had just tampered with a witness, live in court. The judge noticed, and this time, she wasn't going to ignore it. Judge Evelyn Rothman had already warned Blake once for inappropriate behavior. But after the lip-reading report, the laughter, the whispering, and the mocking gestures, she finally lost patience. She slammed her gavel so hard that even the court officers flinched. And then, looking directly at Blake, She made it clear that the games were over. The courtroom fell silent as the judge addressed her. "This is a courtroom, not a gossip column," she said firmly. "If you troll a witness again under my supervision, you'll be held in contempt, period." That wasn't just a warning, that was a line in the sand, and Blake had just gotten as close to crossing it as anyone ever should. What happens when a judge has to discipline a celebrity like she's a teenager, acting out in class? Judge Rothman didn't stop there. She reminded the room, and the cameras recording from the back, that the courtroom follows federal rules. She specifically mentioned Rule 42 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, which outlines punishments for witness tampering and contempt of court. It wasn't an offhand comment. She wanted it on the record. This wasn't just a celebrity trial anymore. It was now a matter of legal integrity. For the first time all day, Blake's legal team looked genuinely rattled. They quickly stood up and asked the judge for a 10-minute recess, but the judge didn't give it to them. She rejected it on the spot. Her words were as sharp as they were final. "You brought this circus, now sit in it." That wasn't courtroom language. That was a moment of real-world justice slapping back at Hollywood behavior. Was that the moment Blake realized she wasn't directing this show? She was starring in a disaster? The tension in the room was now impossible to ignore. Everyone could feel that this wasn't just about one lawsuit anymore. This was about accountability. A famous actress was sitting in front of a judge and being told she could face real punishment if she didn't shape up. No stylists, no handlers, no script, just a courtroom and consequences. Outside the courthouse, the media went into overdrive. Major outlets ran back-to-back coverage of the moment. Legal podcasts, gossip channels, and primetime news shows all carried the same message. Blake Lively was spiraling, and the judge wasn't letting it slide. Even fans who had once defended her started to back away. The tone online shifted from "Blake's just misunderstood" to "this is getting dangerous." But if Blake's already cracking at a hearing, what will happen when the full trial starts and things get even uglier? And that's the real issue now. This wasn't even the main trial. This was just the early phase, the setup, the moment to get facts straight, to figure out what's real and what's noise. But what we saw from Blake wasn't strategy, it was emotional chaos. And now the judge, the public, and possibly even her own legal team are starting to question whether she's ready to face what's coming. Because if this is how Blake Lively reacts when she's being watched, what's she like when no one's looking? The case began quietly without cameras or screaming headlines, just a pre-trial hearing inside a cold federal courtroom. Blake Lively had been sued by her former assistant for defamation and harassment, claiming that behind her public image, Blake used threats, manipulation, and emotional blackmail to control people around her. What made this case different from typical celebrity lawsuits was that it wasn't built on rumors or gossip columns. It was built on leaked messages and first-hand testimony. And that's where Taylor Swift came in. Though she wasn't a defendant, she was brought into the courtroom under subpoena, identified as a key witness after her private conversations with Blake were pulled into the spotlight. No one expected Taylor's presence to shift the tone of the case so drastically. When Taylor Swift walked into that courtroom, people noticed. Not because she's a star, but because she looked nervous, serious, and prepared to say things she never wanted to say out loud. She had reportedly tried to avoid testifying, but the court ruled that her messages with Blake from 2020 were critical to understanding how the assistant was treated behind the scenes. Those texts, according to court documents, touched on deeply personal subjects: breakups, public image control, legal threats. Taylor took the stand and confirmed what the assistant had claimed, that Blake had a habit of leveraging private conversations as tools for manipulation. The courtroom was silent until Blake broke it, by rolling her eyes in full view of the jury box. As Taylor calmly explained that Blake had once hinted at releasing private texts, unless she distanced herself from the assistant publicly, people in the room started shifting in their seats. The judge leaned forward. Blake slouched back. Then came the moment that turned heads. Blake allegedly mouthed the words, "You're such a fake," while Taylor was still mid-sentence. It wasn't said loudly, but it didn't need to be. Several courtroom reporters caught it. A bailiff standing near the bench took note. the courtroom started buzzing in whispers. A federal judge doesn't ignore behavior like that, especially not when it happens during a witness testimony. Judge Evelyn Rothman immediately stopped the proceedings. She looked directly at Blake and issued a warning, not a gentle reminder, but a formal correction. "This is your one and only warning," she said. "You do not mock a witness while they are testifying." At that moment, the entire courtroom shifted. What was supposed to be a process to prepare for trial now felt like a live confrontation playing out under legal pressure. Taylor remained composed, but didn't look back at Blake once. Her eyes stayed on the judge. The tension was thick, and it wasn't over yet. Taylor's testimony got darker. She revealed that she had received threatening emails from anonymous accounts, emails that she said mirrored the tone and language Blake had used in private messages. A digital forensics report submitted by Taylor's legal team connected at least one of those accounts to a production company with known ties to Blake's team. That wasn't speculation. It was presented as part of the court record. Taylor then confirmed that she had filed for a restraining order just 2 months earlier, based on those threats and the fear of future retaliation. The judge called Taylor's testimony deeply disturbing and advised Blake's legal team to instruct their client to stop pushing boundaries. But Blake didn't stop. As Taylor left the stand, visibly shaken but still composed, Blake leaned toward her attorney and, according to multiple courtroom transcribers, whispered, "Enjoy your headlines." That line spread within minutes. It wasn't just heard, it was recorded. And once again, it seemed to prove that Blake wasn't treating this as a legal crisis, but as a publicity war she thought she could win. Reporters tweeted the quote as it happened. Legal experts watching the live stream described it as a reckless move. When the lip reader analysis dropped later that night, things truly exploded. An entertainment outlet released enhanced footage of the courtroom moment just after Taylor left the stand. In the slowed-down clip, Blake turns toward Taylor's side of the gallery and mouths what looks like, "You'll regret this." The outlet brought in a certified lip reader who confirmed the phrase. That clip alone racked up over 20 million views in 24 hours. And more importantly, it pushed the legal community into overdrive. Witness intimidation, even implied, isn't taken lightly in federal court. Blake wasn't just acting rude. She was skating dangerously close to obstruction of justice. That's when Judge Rothman snapped. She slammed her gavel mid-session, hard. Everyone in the courtroom froze. Looking directly at Blake, she called her actions a gross misuse of courtroom protocol and accused her of treating the proceedings like a tabloid stunt. She didn't hesitate to raise the stakes. She said, "If you troll a witness again under my supervision, you'll be held in contempt. Period." The judge then cited Rule 42 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, the one that outlines punishments for threatening or intimidating witnesses. She wanted that on the record. Blake's actions were no longer just embarrassing, they were legally dangerous. Blake's legal team stood up fast, asking the judge for a 10-minute recess to get things under control. But Judge Rothman didn't let them off that easy. She looked at them and said, "You brought this circus, now sit in it." She wasn't joking. There was no recess, no break to cool off. Court continued, and the damage was already done. Everyone in the room saw it. Blake Lively had lost control of her own defense. Her smirks and sarcastic remarks weren't clever anymore. They were hurting her chances in court. And worse, they were proving Taylor right. And that's when the case stopped being about one assistant and started being about whether Blake Lively was about to self-destruct under oath. Once the courtroom hearing ended, the legal system wasted no time responding. Within 24 hours, the case file was updated with a formal note. Blake Lively was now the subject of a potential contempt of court inquiry. It wasn't just about eye rolls anymore. It was about her actions during a live hearing, in full view of a federal judge and cameras, and whether those actions crossed the line into legal misconduct. If the court decides Blake intentionally disrupted proceedings or intimidated a witness, especially someone as high profile as Taylor Swift, then contempt charges are just the beginning. Contempt may sound like a slap on the wrist, but if it's tied to threats or pressure on a witness, it can escalate into something far more serious. The court also issued a temporary gag order that stunned both legal teams. Neither Blake Lively nor Taylor Swift is allowed to speak publicly about the case. No interviews, no posts, no subtle mentions in music or podcasts. The judge made it clear, anything said outside that courtroom can be seen as an attempt to influence public opinion before trial. For Blake, who often uses media and public image as part of her branding, this was a major blow. For Taylor, it may have been a relief. A celebrity trial under silence is rare, but in this case, the silence said everything. In another bold move, the court also restricted media access. After sensitive courtroom footage and transcript quotes made it to entertainment blogs within hours of the hearing, Judge Rothman responded swiftly. The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, and several smaller outlets were denied access to upcoming sessions. The court cited unauthorized leaks and compromised witness security as reasons. For the press, it was a setback. For Blake's legal team, it was a fire alarm, because someone close to the courtroom was feeding content to the media, and that kind of exposure could threaten the entire defense. When even the judge suspects media leaks are being used as weapons, it stops being coverage, it becomes evidence. Legal analysts began to weigh in with growing concern. Several pointed out that if Blake is found to have intimidated a witness, especially someone who filed for a restraining order before even stepping into court, the situation could shift dramatically. What starts as civil contempt can quickly grow into felony-level obstruction charges, a completely different legal category with serious penalties. Blake's team tried to downplay the rumors, but legal experts weren't buying it. As one federal prosecutor put it on a news panel, "You don't smirk and mouth threats in front of a judge unless you've forgotten the courtroom isn't your movie set." And the biggest fear now? That Blake has treated this whole legal battle like a publicity stunt, and the law has finally caught up. To understand how things got this bad, you have to look at where it started. Not in a courtroom, but at a red carpet. Blake and Taylor weren't always on opposite sides of a legal drama. Back in 2021 and 2022, they were seen together often. Vacations, events, birthday shoutouts on Instagram. They were part of the same elite circle, often sharing PR space with Ryan Reynolds and other A-list names. But something changed after the 2022 Met Gala. Multiple sources say Taylor took issue with how Blake handled PR rumors around Ryan's alleged misconduct on a film set. That moment, according to insiders, was when Taylor began to step back. In 2023, things officially fell apart. Blake was accused, unofficially but repeatedly, of leaking private texts that painted other celebrities, including Taylor, in a bad light. One of the biggest stories came from a tabloid leak involving Diddy and ongoing legal threats tied to hush money. The texts appeared in entertainment blogs within weeks of a very public fallout between Blake and a former producer. Not long after, Taylor Swift cut off all contact with Blake. The silence was noticeable. No more posts, no appearances together. The friendship went dark, but the worst was still hiding online, under a fake name. Taylor's team later discovered a burner TikTok account that had been mocking her indirectly for months. The account used coded phrases, references to Taylor's past relationships, and insider jokes only someone in her circle would know. After a digital investigation, the device linked to that account was traced back to a team member associated with Blake's media firm. That evidence wasn't part of a public report, but it made it into the courtroom file. And it explained exactly why Taylor's testimony hit so hard. This wasn't just an old friendship turned cold. This was a years-long pattern of betrayal, slowly unfolding in front of a judge. That context gave weight to everything Taylor said. When she talked about emotional threats and pressure to stay quiet, it didn't feel like drama. It felt like déjà vu, and it gave Judge Rothman a very clear picture of the dynamic between the two women. Taylor wasn't there to destroy Blake's image. She was there because she had been pulled into a legal firestorm she didn't start. And Blake? The court was starting to see her not as a misunderstood celebrity, but as someone who used power and influence to control every narrative, even when it turned legal. Blake Lively may be the one in the spotlight, but now her lawyer is starting to feel the heat too. David Gottlieb, a respected attorney with a long history of handling high-profile cases, found himself blindsided in court. During the hearing, After Taylor Swift gave her explosive testimony about being threatened and manipulated, Gottlieb was seen reacting with clear confusion. He turned to Blake, whispered something, then stared down at his notes, visibly rattled. When the court took a short break, he asked the judge for a private sidebar to clarify a few things. Specifically, whether the statements Taylor made were known to the court ahead of time. But the judge denied that request. She said all discussions needed to happen publicly, in the interest of transparency. That's when it became clear to everyone. Gottlieb wasn't just acting. He truly hadn't been told about Blake's behavior toward Taylor leading up to the trial. The threat, the alleged messages, the burner accounts, none of that had been fully disclosed to him. In legal terms, that's a problem. A big one. Because if an attorney unknowingly misrepresents facts or omits critical information, even unintentionally, they risk facing serious professional consequences. What Gottlieb didn't know might now put his own reputation at risk. After the recess, Taylor's legal team filed a new motion. This time, they weren't just talking about words said in court. They were requesting Blake's complete device metadata to investigate potential digital harassment. That means every email, every burner account login, and every message sent from any phone or computer connected to her inner circle could now be part of court evidence. The motion specifically mentioned recent online activity that appeared designed to intimidate Taylor before her court appearance. If those digital fingerprints traced back to Blake, it would confirm everything Taylor claimed. And it would also prove that Blake had kept key facts from her own defense team. You can't build a solid legal case when your own client is hiding landmines under the floor. After court, when pressed by reporters outside the courthouse, Gottlieb didn't hold back. He said, "I wasn't retained to manage celebrity drama. I'm here for the law." And that's now blurred. It was a rare and public moment of frustration from a lawyer who's known for keeping calm under pressure. His statement raised eyebrows. Was he trying to distance himself from Blake? Was he signaling to the judge that he'd been left in the dark? Either way, one thing was clear. The rift between Blake and her own legal counsel had just gone public. And if your lawyer stops defending you in full confidence, who's left to clean up the mess?